Okay, so I've described the Changemakers Challenge. We've spoken about the grant trap, right? You know, you're only raising grants, you want to diversify. We've spoken about the three barriers to why people may be struggling with raising investment. They didn't realize they could do it. They didn't realize they could mix these different types of investment with grants, right? They thought that it had to be one size fits all. They think it had to be either or. It had to be just one or the other. They didn't realize that you had to break out what you do into projects that you can show to investors and ask them for specific investment into specific projects. And so they were trying to do too much with their ask, right? It was fund my entire organization. And despite the fact that we do all these different things and do it with just one form of investment, which could be equity, debt, or grants, right? And they were saying that and then not finding the way to fit those together. So how do we avoid these mistakes? How do we find a way to thread this needle so that you can actually maximize your different funding options, right? Well, I think what we want is we want a framework for doing that. And we're going to give you three frameworks this morning, or three concepts that will help you to basically thread this needle, okay? So we call these three, number one, pick your project. Number two, the 5 funding tools for funding any project. And number three, the strategy which we call mix and match, which is basically about mixing different forms of funding for different types of project, right? And so we're going to take you through these three strategies so that you can see these for yourself. And what I'd like you to do this morning is explore how you would apply this in your own situation, okay? So we're going to, and I'm going to invite one or two of you to come into the hot seat in just a moment and actually do this with us live on the spot. So anyone who's feeling bold and brave, I'm going to ask you to come up in just a moment and share this process with us as a brainstorming attempt so that we can try and show you different ways that you might think about how to do this, okay? So pick your project, the 5 funding tools of any social entrepreneur, and then the strategy of mix and match, which is how do you bring these together to get the right form of funding. Okay, so let's go through each of these in turn. And this is what we're going to spend the rest of this morning is giving you an insight into these 3 strategies that come together to give you your overall funding strategy, right? Okay, so let's start with the first strategy, which is called pick your project. Okay, so how does this work? Okay. So the core idea that we want to convey is that you don't want to think of your organization as a single monolithic entity which just does good work, okay? What you'll probably find is that when you really look at what you do, you're doing a range of different activities. And those activities come together to deliver your social mission, right? And so what's very helpful is to understand and be able to catalog what activities are you actually running or delivering, right? And basically, we see 3 different discrete types of activity, and we call them products, services, or programs, okay? Products, services, or programs. And so what I want you to do is to look at your organization and tell me, what are your products, what are your services, and what are your programs? And give me 3 to 4 different answers. You know, we do this, and we do this, right? In a very clearly defined way. So let's just quickly talk a little bit about what a product, a service, a program is, right? So a product is literally a physical product. It's a physical item which you sell to a customer, okay? So this would be if you run a program that sells medicine to people in rural villages, that's a product. If you make a hearing aid so that people can hear, that's a product. If you sell eyeglasses to people in India for $5 an eyeglass, that's a product, okay? A physical item that you sell, okay? A service is an intangible service that you provide to a customer. So if you deliver a training workshop for kids, for example, that's a service, right? If you provide advice, legal advice, that's a service, right? So you can imagine what services are, right? And then the commonality here is that a product is sold to a paying customer. So a product is a business, right? You make it and you sell it to a customer. A service actually is also a business if it's sold to a paying customer. So if somebody's actually buying the hearing aid or the eyeglasses or the wheelchair, that is a service business, right? Okay. And then finally, my catch-all is program. And a program is any type of activity at all which is provided for free to a beneficiary. So if somebody receives it from you for free, right, whatever it is, whether it's the hearing aid, a wheelchair, medical advice, legal advice, whatever it is, and that person is a beneficiary, we're going to call that a program. Okay. And as you can see, the clear distinction here is that normally it's businesses that sell products and services, and it's charities that run programs for the benefit of their beneficiaries, right? So that's the classic way of thinking about how to split out and demarcate these different types of activities. So charities do programs, businesses sell products and services, right? Okay. Now, what happens is that in the normal world, in the commercial world, basically we say investment is for businesses and donations and grants is for charities, right? Okay. So what I'm going to show you now is how we change the playbook. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, let's forget about whether you're a business, or whether you're a charity. Let's just say, what are my products, services, and programs, right? So even if you're a charity that actually sells a small portion of what you do to customers, you can do this. Even if you are a business that delivers a service for free because it's part of your social mission, you can do this, right? So what we want to do is we want to break out of the mindset that there's only one type of funding, depending on whether you're a business, and another type of funding, depending on whether you're a charity. And the way we do it is we say, what are your products, services, and programs? And I don't care whether you are a charity or a business, right? So we're going to take it from the organization level down to the PSP level, down to the product, services, and programs. And so what I want you to do is to take what you do and tell me what are your products, what are your services, and what are your programs. Some of those, right, you'll be doing for free. So that's a program. Some of them you'll actually be selling to a customer. And some of them you're probably delivering for free, but if you really thought about it, somebody would pay you for that service or that program. And maybe you could have a business, right? And
Mark,
maybe you could then raise investment. Yeah. So I want to give you a quick example of an organization that does this, just so you can see how this works. And then I'd like to invite you to take 10 minutes and try this for yourself. I see a couple of questions that's coming in the chat group as we go. So Sankara's already given us the product. Fantastic. Jonas is asking the question, does organizing jobs for people with disabilities in the market, is that a service? Yes, that's a service. Yeah. The question, Jonas, though, is do you charge for it, right? Do they pay you for that service, right? If they do, then it's a service. If you have to raise grants for it, then by my definition, it's a program right now, right? But it's a program that could become a service, right? If you were to find a customer for it. And that might be one of the ways in which you diversify your funding, right? So that would be an example of that. And then Shonu's question, are programs separate from new startup initiatives and design innovation? And the answer is yes. So basically, something becomes a product, a service, or a program when it starts to be actually delivered to a customer or a beneficiary, okay? So you have to have taken it out of the R&D lab and actually into the real world, and somebody must be actually benefiting from it. You must be delivering it to somebody, right? At that point, it's crystallized and it's become a product, a service, or a program, right? But if it's in the incubation phase and you're just experimenting and you're building it and you're developing it, it hasn't actually been released yet to a paying customer or to a beneficiary, then it is not yet a PSP. It is not yet a product, a service, or a program, although the intention is that it will become a product, service, or program as soon as you can, right? And so Why do we make that distinction? Because there's almost no funder out there who will fund R&D, right? And so what you have to do is you have to deliver the product, service, or program and get it going. And then the moment that you get it going, you're now able to package it up and go to a funder and say, will you fund this product, service, or program, right? If you're still developing the project and it's just an idea or it's just a prototype, then you've only got two options. You must either do it yourself. In other words, you must put in your own money and develop it, or you must subsidize it from existing products, services, and programs that you are already doing right now, okay, right? Or thirdly, you might be lucky enough to find a funder who is so generous that they are willing to fund R&D even before it's hit the ground, okay? But there will be very, very small amounts of funding available. And frankly, that person is very likely to be your friend who knows you. And because third-party funders don't come in and fund the early stage development, right? And so what entrepreneurs do is they launch product, services, and programs. They raise funding on the back of some early track record and success, right? And they use a portion of those proceeds, or indeed the revenue generated by those product, service programs, in order to incubate the next product, service, or program. And that's the right way in order to do this, because if you go out there and you try and sell something blue sky to a funder, the probability of success is very, very low. So there's a sequencing that needs to happen, right? And the beginning of the sequence is, do you have a product, service, or program that you are ready to sell to a funder, right? For investment. And so that's the first step that we're trying to identify is, what are your tangible assets? What are your tangible PSPs that are monetizable, right? Because that's the basis of investment, and that's what we're trying to get to. So it's great questions. Keep them coming. I want to give you an example, and then I want to let you have a go at doing this, and then let's talk about this to see how it works, right? And Shona, you're a perfect example. You're doing all three. You've got products, wheelchairs, you've got services, you're training people, and you've got programs, right? You're actually, delivering social impact work for free, and you're raising grants in order to do that, right? So ShonaQuip is a beautiful example of what I'm talking about. And I think what's happening here is that you will see that for each of you, you are doing products, services, and programs, right? And you're mixing, and they're all mixed up right now. And if we can just unpack those into discrete units, this is how we raise funding, right? We sell the product, service, or program to the right funder. And so that's the first step, is can we unpack each of these? So let me just give you an example of this. Before we do the exercise, this is an organization working in Nairobi, which is a client of Ashoka's. It was Access Afia is a healthcare social enterprise, and it has a mission to provide high quality, affordable healthcare for people who live in the slums of Nairobi. Okay, it is launched as a business, but it could so easily have been a charity, right? I mean, and the founder, Melissa Menke, is a brilliant social entrepreneur who 8 years ago decided that she had developed a model for how to go into slums and deliver affordable healthcare that was 10 times better than what was previously available, if at all, right? And the way that she did it was she developed a model which of micro clinics, these little very small clinics with doctors and nurses in the clinics, powered by smart technology like smartphones, who can basically deliver healthcare at 80% cheaper than traditional medical providers can do. So Access Sophia is just doing incredible work in primary healthcare for these organizations, right? So you can imagine how an organization like this might originally have been funded, right? The natural way of doing it would have been to launch as an NGO, raise grants, and then just try and do everything. And what they would have found very quickly is that there aren't nearly enough grants out there to be able to help them fulfill their mission, right? The alternative would be to say, this is going to be a business, and then you go out and you raise investment, and then again, you try and do everything with the investment, right? But the problem is that this organization does some things that don't make money, right? It runs vaccination programs, for example, and nobody's going to pay for nurses to go into slums and vaccinate kids. So how does this organization break out of this trap? It can't do it as a charity because there aren't enough grants, right? And it can't really do it as a business because when you add in all the different activities that it does, the ones that don't make any money basically destroy the profits for all, use up all the profits for those that do, right? And therefore, no investor can look at this and go, well, you lose 5% every year. So how can we invest in this, right? So what you have to do is you have to break up the egg and lift out the different projects that are there so that we can expand the universe of funding into this enterprise, right? And so how would Access Affair or an organization like Access Affair do this? Well, here's how this is a theoretical example. They're actually much more complex than this, okay? But what they might do is as follows. They might review what they do and they might say, we actually do 3 things, right? We have a vaccination program where we go out and our goal is to vaccinate 10,000 children, right? Secondly, we run microclinics, and these are actually businesses, okay? They actually make money, not a huge amount of money, but they are profitable. And we want to raise funding to build 10 more such clinics, all right, which will really help us grow, right? And then finally, they also run some pharmacies. And in the pharmacies, they sell medicine directly, and that's actually a pretty good business. So you've got 3 different projects here. You've got a program which makes no money and in fact needs money. You've got a clinic, a microclinic, which, you know, breaks even, let's say, just breaks even at best. And then you've got a pharmacy, which actually is a decent business, right? Okay. And so what they might do is they might take their totality of their mission and they break it out into these 3 different discrete things, one of which could have been a charity, one of which is a break-even business, and one of which is a profitable business, right? And now you've got not one project, one company to fund, but you've got 3 projects to fund. And you can go out to funders, different funders, for different kinds of funding in order to be able to raise more money in the right way for each project, right? The story now becomes very clean, right? You know, we need this funding for the vaccination program, we need this funding for the clinics, and we need this funding for pharmacies, and those pharmacies, by the way, are quite successful, right? So you can start to tell a much more nuanced story, and you can find a different funder for each of these different projects, right? So that's the power of Pick Your Project, is by breaking out the organization in this way, you can now maximize your opportunities and tell different stories, you know, all in service of the mission, right? And you're not limited to the one funder who can now do everything or must do everything. So that's how an example of how Access Affair might break out what they do into 3 different projects, right? Which could be a product or program. And so why don't we just try that? Why don't we just take, Anshul, how long do you think we should go for? 10 minutes? Would people like 10 minutes to just have a think about this? And so if you could maybe just take 10 minutes time, work out what are the projects, services, and programs that you think you currently are working on or deliver, right? Or indeed, are there any embryonic ones that are in the works that could become a product, service, or program, right? And maybe come up with 3 or 4 that you do, or maybe it's just one. But see if you can come up with 2 or 3, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes, and then I'm going to ask 1 or 2 of you to come up on stage and maybe share with us what you think, what projects you've picked, okay? And let's just see how this exercise goes for people. So let's go ahead and do that.
Mark,
yes, please.
Before that, there is a comment from Shona. If you want to just, can you see the chat, or should I read it out?
Shona, why don't you share with us the comment?
So you want me to talk through it?
Yes, if you could just maybe explain what the question is, and then we'll
so as you saw, we have 4 basic different areas that we can fund, but at the moment we're trying to secure investment in our production of our product.
Right.
But the investors want to see the financial returns of that in isolation. They want to actually see the profit it makes.
Yes.
How do we, if we separate it out,
Yeah.
we stand the risk of the business entity dominating decision making in the organization, because then
Yeah.
it's a separate financial entity.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose was that the profit would be used to drive the social development work, which we can't get funded regularly.
Yeah.
So the investors are not happy to see that money being used in the social development. They love the idea that there's impact,
Yeah.
but that's not the impact they want to see. They want to see the return.
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this, Shona. One way would be to do it legally. And what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they create a legal structure which makes it clear which part of this is the business and which part of this is the charity. Sometimes this might even involve having actually a separate legal entity, right? You know, so you have a business that can raise shares, and you have a charity which is a registered charity. And then what you can do is that there are a number of different strategies for how you can tie those legally together in a way that gives you the outcome that you want to achieve. So one of those ways would be, for example, if the charity was itself an owner of the business. And so some organizations do it through legal ownership. So the charity could own 60% of the business and therefore is in control of the business and also decides what happens to the profits, right? And an investor coming in would basically go in with their eyes open, knowing that this was a mission-driven business owned by a charity, essentially, right? Another way it can be done is contractually, which is to say you're going to raise investment, but the investors need to understand that on day one, 50% of the profits of the business will be paid towards social causes, and specifically towards donations towards the charity or whatever it might be. And many entrepreneurs do that, right? They create a clause in there which the investor must sign up to on day one, where they understand that this is more than just a business, that there is mission work going on, and there's clarity on what that means. 50% of the profits, 80% of the profits, 20%, whatever it is, and then there's a negotiation with the investor. Okay, if you want more money, what, you know, how much trade-off do we have, et cetera, et cetera. Or the investor might say, okay, fine, but can I please be paid back first, and then once I'm paid out, all the money goes to the charity, right? And so there are lots and lots of different ways you can play it, but essentially the two principles here are legal structure and contractual structure, right? Are the ways that you clarify the relationship between these different projects.